It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by line mate Devin Little and our previous line mates, Patrick Brown and Kyle Knopp, also former hosts of the show. Special episode with them on here. And first of all, Pat, how's it going?
Going good. It's summer is winding down in Arizona, and heading into September almost feels like heading into March in the Midwest. You feel like you should be out of it, and you're not out of it at all. It's still it's still, we got a little ways to go, but everything's going good, and boy, is it exciting to be back.
For sure. And Kyle, how's it going?
Oh, it's excellent. Since I've last joined you guys, made the move from Maryland up to Connecticut, coaching girls travel hockey, and we actually kicked off our season with our 14 AA team today with a tournament, and actually saw the Arizona Kachinas walking in as I was walking out. So thought of you, Pat, as I always do when I see them running around, and then
Love
but
it.
yeah, it's great. Love being in the hockey world in any way I can, and it's super great to be back with you boys here.
Sure. And Devin, how's it going?
Oh, I'm here. I'm excited to talk about the Wings again. I'm with Pat. The summer is still roaring on, and I'm very much starting to think about apple cider and cinnamon donuts and colored leaves, let me tell you, and hockey, of course.
For sure. Well, let's get into the show. And as we always do on the show, one good, one bad. And we're going to extend it to the full offseason rather than just this past week, because really nothing's happened at all in Red Wings land, because this happened. Obviously, lots of stuff's happening in the NHL. Seems like the GMs have woken up, doing a lot of other things, but the Red Wings have been quiet. So I'll start with you, Pat. A good and a bad from the offseason so far.
Sure, I'm gonna keep this Coyotes or Utah hockey centric now. Do a little tie in here. I'll start with the bad. And you all know how I feel about my own armchair GMing. So it is what it is. But the bad, I was kind of disappointed to see Shane Gostisbehere did not re-sign with the Red Wings. I thought that he was a really critical piece of that team, especially that power play. I think everybody remembers him kind of saving the season
Absolutely.
with that vertical. Happy for him in Carolina and the deal that he got. And obviously it just didn't work out in Detroit financially. But I was bummed to see that. I thought he was a great addition to the blue line and brought a lot. But in that same vein, one good, I am thrilled to see Christian Fischer back. I know he didn't offensively put up, a ton of numbers. I think he finished with 19 points on the year, but he's such a good role guy to have on the team. He grinds, he works hard, and perhaps most importantly, he's just unbelievable in the locker room. An incredibly good person, a pretty darn good hockey player, and fills a really good role on that team. So I was happy to see the return of Christian Fischer. Looking forward to seeing what he does this season. And that's my good.
I love Christian Fischer. I thought he was a great signing when he was initially signed from the Coyotes. So, and he had a great season on that third line and bumped up to the third line and played really good on that checking line. So yeah, very good to see him back. All right, over to you, Kyle. A good and a bad from the offseason here.
Yeah, I'm going to start with my bad. And I think, I speak for all of now casual Red Wings fans when I say the loss of firepower, the loss of goals that the Red Wings let go through the offseason, would be my bad because, yeah, they finished ninth in the NHL last season in goals for, but we also finished ninth in goals against. So, if we don't have the goals for anymore, we better get those goals against. So I think, in terms of just looking at this in telescope view, those goals lost are really, really going to be detrimental. And then on the other side of that, the one I have two goods really. One, Lalonde's got his guys now, right? He went out and got some defensive forwards. He got some shutdown defensemen. So he really wants to tighten and get into his system of playing a good, solid 200-foot game through all 5 guys on the team. And so he's got his guys. So that's good, right? We get to finally see what he can do, what kind of system he can put into place, and where we'll go from here in terms of the coaching staff, in terms of the kids' development, in terms of where this team is. So that's my good. And then the other good, which obviously again from the casual viewpoint, the one thing that saved the offseason was signing Tarasenko. I mean, without that, I think we'd all be talking about how this offseason was a loss for Detroit. But they did get one big name guy. And I think going along with him and re-signing Patrick Kane, they're at least going to get bums in seats. So we'll go from there. But those are my good and bad.
I mean, Tarasenko for sure was a great signing. I think he can still be a 25 goal scorer with the right guys.
Absolutely.
And he's not overly old, and he still looks like he can still score. So that's good. And then, of course, Kane coming back is a big thing.
And the one that really hurt was losing Wallman. I really enjoyed Wallman last year. I thought he brought a good personality to the team, but I think San Jose is going to love him, and I think he's going to be a great fit out there. So, hats off to them.
For sure. All right, finishing with you, Devin. I know we've talked a lot about what's happened to the offseason, but what's a good and a bad for you?
I've got 2 bads and a good. I'm gonna do the flip of Kyle. My first bad is that I didn't get to we didn't get to have Pat and Kyle on when they signed Patrick Kane. I think about all the shows that we did when like they were losing left and right, and like we're finding things to talk about that like we're talking about a bottom 10 team, and then of course the first season where we don't have either of them, they signed Patrick freaking Kane. A whole new world in Red Wings land. But no, in seriousness, my other one bad is Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond still need deals, boys. And I don't know about you guys, but
no, I agree.
I thought that was going to be the first thing they did this offseason. And
absolutely.
Here we are a couple weeks out from training camp, and those boys are not signed. Now, to be fair, I think they will get signed. Let's be serious. They're Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider. It'd be craziness if they didn't get signed. But just the fact that we're nearing the end of August here and they're still unsigned is I wouldn't have predicted it. My one good is going to be honestly that I like the additions Yzerplan made because he didn't artificially augment the team. What I mean by that is that it kind of goes back to the old saying where you can't build a team through free agency. I think that with the signings he made obviously, like Kyle said, they signed some really good players that should help the team out, but they didn't sign anybody that is going to like make the Red Wings a playoff team by themselves. And the reason why that's good is because you want players like Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider to be the reason that they make the playoffs. At the end of the day, that's why they're rebuilding. That's why they've continued to make draft picks and add future assets. So, maybe didn't set off the fireworks that we were maybe thinking they were going to set off this offseason, but they're still positioned to have a good season. And if they make the playoffs, it's because their kids took big steps forward.
100%. I think that's the biggest thing you want to see. And in past off seasons where Yzerplan signed these veterans that keep making the young guys not be able to make the team, he's not doing that this off season. I mean, adding Tarasenko could take away a spot for Berggren maybe, but
oh no.
And that's the thing, right? And it all, right? Pat, I've got an off the rush question for you later on that one.
All right.
I'm so nervous for those today.
All right. Well, let's move to that and start and talk about, because Pat, Kyle, we haven't had you on the show to talk about the Red Wings since their bottom 10 finishes and all that stuff. I'll start with you, Kyle. What are your thoughts on the state of the Red Wings right now? I mean, are they closer to a playoff team? Are they in the middle? Do they still have a long way to go? What are your thoughts on where their state of the union, I guess, right now?
Yeah. I mean, I want to say if you were to go back and look at one of our episodes from like 2 summers ago, we were saying 24-25 seasons probably where they're going to be sniffing the playoffs, right? They approached that last year, the whole end of the season fiasco we all know about. Don't need to discuss and bring up bad feelings, but yeah, I mean, they are close, right? But at the same time, development rebuilds, they're not linear, so it's not a bad thing if they don't make the playoffs this year. So with that said, I think they are on the right track still. I have great hopes for them. I think they're really going to make strides. But the Eastern Conference and Atlantic Division are tough, right? Like it's not a guarantee that there's certain teams that are going to make it every year. Like it's a toss up. You could go down that list and basically it's 60-40 at best if a team's going to make it into the playoffs. So it's just such a tough conference division. It's such a tough, just the NHL, the parity of it's a tough league to play in. And like Devin and Pat alluded to, they need a lot of help from young guys to come in and start producing right away. And, if we want to be realistic, and I try to look at things in a realistic light, I think that there's probably going to be some step backs, but that doesn't mean that things are, in a spot where we need to panic. So, I guess my state of the union is, I think we're okay. Red Wings fans, we're okay. We don't need to panic yet. I'll talk a little bit about it later. But yeah, I think that there's a few things that as long as they're still going in the right direction, we're fine, even if we're, 10 points out of a playoff spot as opposed to 1 point out of a playoff spot this year.
Or tied.
Tied, yeah, right.
They needed 1 point. That's all they needed.
Not even a non-goal from Washington.
That too. Yeah, some help. That didn't happen. All right, Pat, over to you. What do you think about the Red Wings right now?
Yeah, it's funny. Kyle mentioned years and years ago talking about like the 2025-2024 season, and it felt like it was so far off then, and then here we are.
Yeah.
Right. I think they've taken the right steps. I think, and again, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later too, but you need to remember where the Red Wings were when Steve Yzerman took over as GM, and the bad contracts that were almost impossible to shed at the time. It was almost longer than what a typical rebuild would see. And he asked for patience then, and it's easy then to say, oh yeah, you've got our patience. And then as the seasons wear on, patience begins to wear thin. I had the benefit of kind of watching the then Coyotes from the ground up rebuild with GM Bill Armstrong, and he just shed everything. He was able to get OEL and Connor Garland to Vancouver at the time. He was able to get Christian Dvorak to Montreal. They moved everybody out and just started from absolutely nothing, but they had that benefit of having nothing in year one. Whereas the Red Wings didn't. They had some old contracts, some bloated contracts that they had to deal with in year one. So I do think that I think the Wings are getting there. You still need to allow time for some goaltenders to develop and things like that. But I think off the rush answer, so it's supposed to be shorter. But I think they're a fringe playoff team. It's going to depend on how a few people perform. It's really going to depend on the health of the team as well. And I think Patrick Kane is an X factor in determining whether or not this team makes the playoffs, because you saw the chemistry start with him. Like, he's Patrick Kane. He was great out of the gate, but you really saw the chemistry start and the camaraderie start toward the end of the season. And those last 2 games with Montreal were just, electric up until the shootout that ended up meaning nothing. So they're right there. One last thing I would say that, Utah hockey coach Andre Tourigny would always say when we would ask, do you think this is the playoff team this year? Well, remember, to be a playoff team, someone who made it has to not make it.
Yeah.
So who's that going to be? Well, there might be an argument for Tampa or something like that. But just remember, for someone to make the playoffs, a new team to make it, it's stating the obvious, but somebody's got to miss out. Yep. Who's that going to be? It's a tough league.
Yeah.
And like Kyle said, tough division. And there's so many uncertainties in this division too. Like, are the Sabres going to finally make that step? Are the Senators going to make the step? Well, if they do, that means it makes it much harder for the Red Wings to do it too, because some of the big boys are going to have to drop off. And I don't know. And Boston Bruins are always a wild card. You think they're going to drop off one, and they don't. So, I mean,
so true. Every year, they're going to finish last, and then they set the record for wins in a season. Or something.
The Boston Bruins make me think of that quote from, excuse the reference, but Austin Powers. Why won't you die yet?
Well done.
That's the thing, right? Maybe this year they'll do. Maybe they'll fall off this year. I don't know. I'm gonna say they're gonna do good, because last 2 seasons I've said they're gonna do bad, and they haven't. So maybe I'll do the reverse whammy on them this time.
There you go.
All right, off the rush now, and I'll start with you, Pat. Off the rush question on Jonatan Berggren.
All right.
Do you think he's getting traded? Because the spot I think he has to play in the top 6, and there's no top 6 spot for him. Does he get dealt?
I'm so bad at the beer league GM. I'd hate to see it. I would hate to see it, given how he was literally my first article at the Hockey Writers ever so many years ago. But I think he's a valuable trading chip. I really think he's a valuable commodity. I'm not sure what Steve Yzerman, would be able to get in return for that. And to your point, he's a top 6 forward. I think he's very talented, and he's getting to where he's really going to be able to start bringing some value to a team, whether it's a team that's rebuilding that can put him in as a piece to continue to build around, or a team making a push late in the season. I could definitely see it. Again, it breaks my heart to say it. But you also don't know what's going to happen with injuries. Mm-hmm. And that's always a wild card in the season. And, if he gets a spot, if he's not dealt early on and he gets a spot, what does he do with it in the top 6? So nothing's a given, but he's a very, very valuable asset right now. And I do think if you're not going to give him that regular spot, you definitely need to start entertaining that idea.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is he's one of those guys that could break out somewhere else, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no. I mean, trade out.
Sure.
But I mean, that's just how it is when all these young guys are coming through, and he's a guy that needs to play in the top 6. We'll see what happens with him. All right, Kyle, over to you. I'm curating these. I'm not giving you the same question.
I was ready.
All right. So this one's going to be on Simon Edvinsson. Do you think he's a guy that could play a consistent top 4 role this season? Because he is right now, I mean, arguably their second best defenseman now that Jake Wallman's gone. And part 2, should he play with Moritz Seider on the top pairing?
So to answer the first question, do I think he's a legit top 4, consistent top 4? I think the answer is absolutely yes. I think this season's where he will solidify that role and really make a name for himself as, a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. To answer that second question, no. I think he needs to kind of be protected and shielded on that second pairing because it's going to allow Seider to take some pressure off of him so he can be able to make a few more mistakes as he's maturing, as he's developing as a full season in the NHL. I know he's not technically a rookie anymore, but he hasn't had a full season up there. And so that's really going to kind of help take that, extra pressure off of him of having to come and perform. And then this, part B to that second question is, okay, so we put Seider and Edvinsson together. Who we put in on the second line? Sherratt and Petrie? I don't think so. Like, we did that last year, and yeah, so I think your options are really limited in terms of what you can do with them anyway, but that's for the better because now they're almost forced to have to shield him more to just make the defense more solid throughout, up and down the roster.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to see Seider and Edvinsson together, but it does top load your defense quite a bit, and now you're left with a thin rest of your lineup, right?
And if I can add on to that, the skill of the NHL is so high these days that your third and fourth line, I mean, look at any recent Stanley Cup winning team. I mean, you know, when I came on to the Hockey Writers and first started covering teams, I was covering Tampa Bay Lightning, and they had that really powerful third and fourth line that just were, you know, could be second line, maybe in first line on some of the lower tier NHL teams. I mean, the skill is just so deep that if you know, you got to have someone that's skilled playing your second and third pairing as well, or else, you know, you're going to get burned deeper in the game.
For sure. All right, Devin. This is on defense.
Get out of this one.
Do the Red Wings need to make a move on defense before the season to be closer to a playoff team? Because we've talked about the defense is probably not good enough right now. Do they absolutely need to make a move for that to be a reality?
Beginning of the season, I'm going to say no, they don't absolutely have to make one. Now, I do think they should still be looking around because, as we talked about before, there's a reason why they were linked to Jacob Trouba. That obviously didn't happen, but I think that now that you're this close to training camp, unless there's some opportunity out there that you're still kind of grinding away at, let's see what Edvinsson looks like. Let's see what Albert Johansson looks like. Let's see, you know, because Ben Sherratt had a better year 2 than he did in a year 1. Does Jeff Petrie have a better year 2? You know, and then even the additions they made in the forward group, are they able to improve defensively enough as a team that not making a move isn't a necessity? Then once you've made that determination, then you either know you don't have to make a move, or then you know for sure it's time to kind of do something. I do think that if they're close to a playoff spot, if they're in that push around the trade deadline, I think that's where they're going to target is the blue line. And I do think that they're going to be in a position this year where Yzerman's going to feel maybe a bit more pressure to make a move. Not anything crazy, but shore up that blue line a little bit. But that's almost a year away at this point. We're talking about the trade deadline next year. So no, not right now, I don't think. See what you've got, take stock of things, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's probably the right way of doing it too, because I mean, who are you going to grab right now? There's not really, and you obviously have to give up something to get these guys.
I mean, that's always the key, and the trade market has not been cheap for a very, very, very long time. Assets have been heavy. So all these assets that you've been accumulating throughout the rebuild, you're going to have to start giving them up. And that's the point, right? But Matt, you hit it on the head. And people forget this. And are you giving up a lot for a rental? It's there's a lot that goes into that. And I'm so glad you said that, because people forget you got to give someone up. And the trade market has not been cheap for a very, very long time. It's been crazy. So what some GMs
if anything,
have been
it's getting worse. I mean,
for sure.
Right? Yeah.
So
some of the contracts, and the terms that are being dealt out for, defensemen, especially rental defensemen or bridge gap defensemen. I mean, it's just like, it's insane what they're paying. I mean,
we've got inflation in the US. We've got inflation.
Unless you're the Sharks and get Wallman for future considerations.
I know.
Yeah.
Is
it going to be like a Chris Draper? They're going to give us $1, or what's going on?
Really, really wanted to shed that contract. Wallman and a second. Well, it was anyway. So we don't have to rehash that. Sorry.
It's okay. All right. Well, that was a slow off the rush. Well, yes, quick off the rush for each one, but there you go.
Sorry.
Lots of turnovers on that rush.
Did you guys miss me? I'm back.
All right. Well,
off the rails, not off the rush.
The rails.
Off the rails. Nice.
I like it.
All right. Well, before we move on to the rest of our show here, we got to pay the bills and talk about our Substack here at the Hockey Writers. Great newsletter you get in your inbox maybe 3 times a week, depending on how many articles we got on the site. But you get it in your inbox, all the best articles on the hockeywriters.com. We also got the premium tier that you can also sign up for, and you can get a bunch of different exclusive articles that our writers here give at the Substack. So take a look in the description below. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the Yzerplan, and we've talked about it at length on this show. when Pat and Kyle were hosts as well. So of course we got to keep talking about it. So Pat, are you still on board with the Yzerplan? What are you looking for this season to stay on board, and what needs to be done to get you back on board if you're not on board right now?
No, I'm on board, and I've never been off board. My mind goes back to this very show many years ago when we interviewed part of the namesake of this show, the one, the only Darren McCarty.
Yeah.
And very memorable interview for a lot of reasons, and it was a thrill to have him on here. But remember, he said then, trust the Yzerplan. And it hasn't changed. There are things that Steve Yzerman has done. I think everybody has second guessed. I am still baffled they didn't take Wallstead, to be honest with you. However, Cossa is developing nicely. He is developing nicely. But I think overall, yes, absolutely still on board with the Yzerplan. I think you see that progression continuing to happen.
Mhm.
And something that you got last season that really kind of flies under the radar because the way the team is eliminated from the playoffs are those meaningful games that they played down the stretch. Again, working for a rebuilding team for the past 3 seasons, GM Bill Armstrong of the Utah Hockey Club, their goal last year was just to play in those meaningful games, and they only got into January before they hit a 14-game losing streak. There's a big difference between playing in January, maybe on fringe of a wild card spot, and playing for the playoffs in the very last game of the season. And that last week, heading into those games, they're playoff-esque. It's certainly not the same thing, but you've seen the progression. You see how they're continuing to play in those meaningful games, and that's why I think they might make the jump into the playoffs, barring the variables we talked about earlier in the show. I'm totally on board with the Yzerplan. I still think there's something bigger because of that Wallman deal. It may not be this year, guys. That may not be. I believe, in fact, Yzerman said, that he didn't fit in long term or something. I'm not quoting him. It's not a direct quote. I think I read something like that somewhere, but there's a plan. I think it continues to improve. I think it continues to evolve. And, all the players you picked, by the way, don't pan out. Moritz Seider was a gem, an absolute gem. And it's great to see that. So, yes, I absolutely think the Yzerplan is on track. I absolutely still believe in that Yzerplan. And I think it's heading in the right direction. I said it to lead off the show. When he took over as GM, he said it's going to take patience. He knew the task ahead, and everybody, it's easy to nod and say yes when the franchise icon takes over as GM on day one. It's a lot harder as those seasons go by and you continue to see losing seasons, but they're playing in those meaningful games. They're getting that valuable experience. They've got some veterans on the team now, like Patrick Kane with championship experience that can kind of teach the younger kids how to continue to win. And I do think it's on the right track.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think he's just doing what the Red Wings did all those years ago, where they just kept going, and that they're a well-run organization, and they still are. And that's why I'm, apart from the Canucks, the Red Wings are my second, team for a long time because of that. I just love how they run the organization, and I still think they are running it pretty well. All right, Kyle, what do you think about the Yzerplan?
Yeah, so at one point when I got this itinerary for the week, I thought about playing devil's advocate.
You should. I was hoping someone
trying
would.
to do get some clicks on our show this week, but honestly, here's the thing. Yzerman came up with the Red Wings when they were the Dead Wings, right? And he turned that franchise around as their captain and set the tone, brought them into a new culture, and really started the dynasty of going 26 years in a row in the playoffs. He leaves, after retiring, comes back, and his vision is to get them in that same mentality, that same structure, that same work ethic. And to me, it's still on path. I mean, if you look at every season, they've increased their amount of wins. They've increased their points, right? Every year, the last few years, they've continued to make progress. We, as a fan base, were rooting for a playoff spot up until the final day of the regular season. Do you know how many teams get to do that every year?
Final seconds. Final seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that we're even in that type of conversation right now, it just screams that we're on the right path in my mind. So of course I am all in. I am going to at least give him a few more years. But with that said, I can pinpoint three things that I want to see this year and probably next year, but at least the start of this year to really know that we're still on the right path. And the first thing I mentioned it earlier was coaching. Lalonde's finally got his system. He finally has his defensive players that are gonna really, really take care of their own zone and work from back all the way south to north and really work as a unit. So now we got to see it. That has to come to fruition. If we are still, if you look back at the last couple of seasons, the Red Wings, they played in streaks, right? They went on a win streak, then they went on a losing streak, then they went on a losing streak, then they went on a win streak. It was very streaky. If you can see them get that consistency in their game, right, and not just try to outscore opponents every game, but try to outplay opponents and win those 1-0, 2-1 games that the Red Wings really haven't been known to win in a long time. I think that's really going to point to coaching as being the right direction for this program. My second thing are Yzerman's moves throughout the season and then at the trade deadline. If the team is within hunting distance of the playoffs, is he going to make some moves that are going to help the team this year, or is he going to continue to help make moves that are going to help him in 2-3 years? If it's 2-3 years, I think we're still going to be in a good position. I think if he starts trying to pull the trigger this year, then maybe we have to have another conversation of saying, are we trying to, exit the highway a little too early, or, where are we at that point? And of course, that's going to come from production of the young kids. That's going to come from production of our free agents. So that's something that, not even me with a crystal ball can pretend to do. And then the last thing is that's really going to nail this. We're in the right direction for me. Are these contracts, especially with Seider, especially Raymond? Are we getting them done? Are they team friendly? Are they, going to really make the guys want to continue to play in Detroit, or are they going to feel like they kind of got, a backhanded compliment? What is this going to look like in terms of how we build for the future with those two players? So those are really the three things that I am focusing on in terms of is this still the right path that Yzerman's on? If we really want to really nitpick and break it down. But tie me to the steering wheel, boys. I'm going down with the ship right now.
Yeah, it's I think it's just a lesson of patience. You just gotta be patient, and that's the thing. You can't think, because sometimes these moves, these quick moves don't work because you're just pulling the trigger thinking. And it's happened to many GMs, and they don't have a job right now because of it. So yeah. All right, Devin, finishing with you. What do you? I know we have had many discussions about the Yzerplan, but are you still on board?
I'm still on board, and the biggest reason, and it's been alluded to, they've progressed year after year since Yzerman took over. It actually kind of cracks me up when people are doom and gloom about the state of the team when all you can ask for is progress at the end of the day, and that's what they've had year after year. What more can you ask for? I always, a big thing I've been thinking about recently is that the Red Wings aren't lucky, really. They weren't able to get weren't able to take any shortcuts. They didn't get a first overall pick. That's a shortcut. They didn't even get a lottery pick. Those are shortcuts. They don't operate in a state that has no income tax. That's a shortcut. They aren't a place like LA or New York that's like a destination spot. Those are shortcuts. That's why New York.
It is to me.
That's why the Rangers were able to rebuild in 2 years, because they got a first round pick, or they got a first overall pick. They got a second round pick or a second overall pick before that as well, and they're in New York City. The Red Wings didn't get any of that. They don't have any of that. So when you aren't able to take shortcuts, you got to take the long way. And unfortunately, sometimes a long way is a long ride. And that is why I say at the end of the day, they're making progress year after year. That's all you can ask for, especially when you're not finding shortcuts. Now, again, like Kyle, I will have a caveat to this. At some point, you got to trust the kids.
Yeah.
We talked, a couple of years ago, we thought they had one more year of tanking in them. They're going to tank for Connor Bedard, and then they signed like 6 dudes in free
Yeah.
agency and decided they were going to be competitive. And then last year they signed more guys, and here we are, and it's like, are they ever going to play their freaking kids?
Yeah.
Why are they drafting? Why are they drafting these guys if they're never going to play? So at some point,
The trade for a defenseman.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. At some point, these kids got to play, and if they're the future, that future has to arrive at some point.
Yeah.
So, I'm with the group here. I do think that there's probably going to be a step or two backwards this year, and that kind of goes against what I'm saying about progress. But it's because they're letting the kids play finally,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of expect that. So
And
as long as they remain competitive and they aren't taking a giant step backwards over the next year or two, I'm on board. Without the luck, without any sort of shortcuts, this takes time. And the fact that they've continued to get better year after year, again, what more can you ask for?
Mhm.
And if I can add on to that, Devin, I mean, this is a blue collar team with a blue collar rebuild, and with that comes the blue collar mentality of, you got to just put your head down and get to work. And we mentioned before, progress isn't linear. Sometimes you got to take a step back to take 3 steps forward, and so yeah, it could very well be a step back type of season, but absolutely, this team is built to keep driving forward.
You got some great core players. I mean, you're looking at basically a core player at each position. I'm going to still say, even their goaltending, they've got some potential big pieces there. And you got Raymond leading the forwards. You got Seider leading the defense, and potentially Cossa or Augustine leading your goaltending. So that's pretty good for a team that's progressing, which I really like too. All right, second half off the rush, and I'll start with you, Kyle, on this one. I'll have the same question for each for this one. I just mentioned Sebastian Cossa and Trey Augustine. Who do you have more confidence in as the future starting goaltender of the Red Wings at this point? Who do you think has the higher ceiling, I guess, is the question.
You're asking the Spartan in this one?
Yeah. I have to say Augustine.
Yeah,
right. At this point, so you phrased it 2 different ways. At this point, who do I feel more confident in? Sebastian Cossa. Who do I think has the higher ceiling? That's a fantastic question. Because I would have said Cossa hands down until Augustine came in and just lit up the Big Ten and the NCAA last year as a freshman, right? Not even a sophomore, a freshman. I mean, he's playing his first year there and comfortable. He had great, his feet were set. He was calm in his movements. Like everything was square to the shooter. Like he was very sound positionally. And I think that's what you need as a goaltender, is having that confidence of just being comfortable in your body within the crease, if that makes sense, right? Like you got to be comfortable in that position. I just felt like his comfort level as a freshman at the NCAA level was out of this world. Will that change when he gets up to in the professional ranks? Absolutely. But I think based on those, what I saw, because, I tried to watch a lot of Michigan State hockey when I can. I thought that his ceiling just took off and probably doubled in size from where I thought he was to where he is.
It's great to have those 2 goaltenders in the system. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Devin, what about you? It's a 2-part question then. Who do you feel more confident in right now, and who has the higher ceiling?
Yeah, these off the rush questions are more like full-blown power play setups at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say Cossa, honestly, for both. And that's a hesitant answer because I'm still a really big believer in Trey Augustine too. Like you said, Matt, it's an embarrassment of riches to have both of these guys in the system. I think it's almost the ideal situation where you aren't, your eggs aren't entirely in Cossa's basket, because if he doesn't work out, oh well, you still got that kid at Michigan State who's lighting it up. So really great situation. But you don't draft a guy 15th overall if you don't think he has a chance to be like an elite level goaltender. And
Yeah.
like Pat said, one of my favorite moments on this show actually was when they made the Cossa pick, because we were all just
We were on
baffled.
it.
And they didn't they
Yeah.
trade up too? Didn't
They
trade
traded up,
too?
yeah. And we were all
We
like,
were-
oh boy,
we were
it's
for
Wallstead.
For sure it was
Like,
Wallstead.
like I'm sure we would have all placed a collective bet on it. We would have lost
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Pat said too, Costa's been progressing nicely.
Yep. Absolutely.
He hasn't taken the traditional route to where he's at, but everywhere he's gone, he's gotten progressively better over the course of the year, and I have no reason to doubt that he's going to continue to do that at this point. I think bare minimum he's going to be an NHL goaltender. It's just kind of a matter of how good of one. And then for like you said with Augustine, I think they're kind of positioning themselves to have that Boston situation where you have two really good guys, and hopefully they kind of form some chemistry too, because boy, it would be fun to see some goalie hugs in the winged wheel, right?
Right.
Yeah, it would. It really would.
Be pretty fun. All right, Pat, I probably know your answer for it, but what about you?
Well, and to Devin's point, you don't trade up for a goalie in the first
Yeah.
round and not have full belief in him. And he has progressed. Cossa for both, in my opinion. Augustine, obviously incredibly talented. College is so much different. I know I'm stating the obvious here, but it takes such a long time to develop into an NHL goalie, with the very, very few exceptions. It takes such a long time that Cossa's light years ahead right now anyways. So we're not talking about two different generations, but we're certainly talking about, Cossa potentially becoming the guy long before Augustine even is considered, at the NHL level. So I think Cossa for both. I think I've been really impressed with the way Cossa has handled adversity. He has shown, those even the demotions into, Toledo. I feel like he's performed very well. He has progressed the way he's needed to progress, and I think he's going to be one heck of a goaltender. So for me, it's Cossa for both, and you don't know what Augustine can bring to the table later. And I'm not just talking about on the Red Wings. We talk about trades over and over and over. It's important to have those really good assets and those really good prospects, not just to bring them up and play them, but when you get to a certain point in your rebuild, you deal them. And you saw that on a minor level. Connor Geekie, top prospect in the Coyotes organization, dealt for Mikhail Sergachev to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I was stunned. We were on the draft floor, stunned when that came through. And never in a million years could have pictured Connor Geekie not ever making his NHL debut with the Utah Hockey Club. But that's why you bring those assets in. You've got the luxury of collecting them, developing them, having them do very well, and then potentially trading them to complete the puzzle in the end.
Yeah.
So I still think it's Cossa.
Yeah, to wrap up this very slow rush here, Pat, I mean, you said it really well though, right? There's going to be a gap between the two of them in terms of their development and when they make their entry. So
100%.
you're going to get 3, 4, maybe even 5 years of Cossa before Augustine's even, starting to really kind of make noise on the doorstep. So at that point, I mean, you have a guy that's 5 years into the system that's comfortable, and you have another guy coming in and learning from him. I mean, that's the Swayman-Ullman situation that the Bruins have had for the last 4 or 5 years, right? So that's not a bad thing to have, coming down the farm. So
it's a 90s hockey rush, not a 2020s hockey rush.
For sure. Real quick, Pat, I can still hear your voice from that moment. He took Cossa.
Was I on for that?
No.
We
were all on. Yeah, we were live.
The draft was live. We were watching live.
Oh my God. I need to.
Yeah, we were
my
recording
gosh.
live that day. I think it was Thursday night in
during the
April.
draft.
I need to go back and watch that, because I remember traded up. I was just waiting to hear Wallstead at that point. Super excited. And Wallstead's obviously playing in the NHL, mop-up games, not meaningful games, but but again, I think Kossa's progressing nicely, and that's a funny anecdote, Devin, because I'll have to go back and watch that.
Funny how things come full circle, eh?
For sure.
Well, look at the Predators. I know Askarov's asked for a trade, but that was because Saros is now there for long term, so they had to trade him, and that could happen too, where you're looking at Cossa being the guy for a while. Does Augustine want to be a backup? Probably not. So I mean, that could happen too.
Absolutely.
All right, last off the rush. This one should be quick. I just want a quick answer, maybe quick explanation. But
how many times can you say quick? We got it, man. We got it.
All right.
Speed it up, boys.
Pat, who's your top prospect of the Red Wings right now?
Okay.
Really putting me on the spot.
That's off the rush.
You know what? I'll take heat for this, but in lieu of what we just talked about, Sebastian Cossa.
Solid.
There you go. Devin, what about you? I know we had your rankings, but
Axel Sandin Pellikka.
You go. And Kyle, what do you got?
Until he makes the team full time, I'm going to look at him as a prospect, but I'm still going Marco Kasper. I think he's got a chance to do something fun, something special in a new role that's opening up. So
it's a good one. I have a few. I could have arguments for all of them. I really love Nate Danielson. I think he's going to end up being a heck of a player. Probably not an 80, 90 point guy, but that Jonatan Taves type guy that can just do everything and play a ton and be your leader up there. I really like Danielson. So because the Canucks were apparently in the running to get him, draft him, but then he got drafted before. So
you heard it here first. Gone. You heard it here first. Danielson greater than or equal to Jonatan Taves. You heard it here first.
I have made that comparison.
The Red Wings hot takes.
Actually, I don't know if I said
Patrick
Taves.
Kane, right?
I don't know if I said Taves. I said Horvat. I think it was Horvat that I kept.
No, I heard Taves. So
now I said. I also compared Horvat to Taves in the past too. He has not. He's really good, but he's not a Taves. All right, now I'm going to hand the reins over to Devin, and he's got an announcement on the show. So, Devin, over to you.
So first, I want to say to Pat and Kyle, thanks for being here. I know I enjoyed talking Red Wings with you guys again. I can tell you that I had a few different viewers and listeners telling me when are we gonna have Pat back? When are we gonna have Kyle back? So this goes out to you guys that wanted to see these guys again.
They had nothing better to do with their lives, huh? Just kidding. Thank you if you were actually asking.
Got the gang back together, but it's not just because you guys asked for them to come back that they are back. Today is a significant show, and here's why. I've got a prepared thing I got to say here. Since our show's inception in the fall of 2020, we have been incredibly fortunate. It was a shot in the dark that started this show in the first place. We didn't know if we would have chemistry together. We didn't have an overarching goal for the show. I mean, heck, it's no secret that we share our name with another Red Wings podcast. Quite frankly, we weren't sure if people were ever going to watch or listen to us. A lot of shows created by some of the most talented and passionate writers that any of us have had the pleasure of working with have come and gone from this channel. Blackhawks Banter, Howlers and Growlers, shout out to you, Pat, Chicks and Sticks, etc. They all played as much of a role building up this channel as our show, but those shows did not get to leave on their terms. We are so fortunate that you guys show up to talk about the Red Wings with us week after week, and it is because of that this show gets to go out on our terms. This is the last episode of the Hockey Writers Grind Line, at least as you know it. First, let me clarify. I am departing the show to begin work on a new project outside of this channel. While I am staying with THW as a writer, my departure effectively places THW Grindline into a dormant state for the time being. The show remains property of the Hockey Writers, and the show may return sometime in the future with a whole new cast of grinders. If and when that happens, I hope you'll throw your support behind them just like you did with this version of the show, because I know I will. Second, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that helped make this show happen. Thank you to Bruce Hollendrake, Dina Plunkett, and Kyle Geip for allowing us to run with this crazy idea. Thank you to Tony Wallach, Ian McNaughton, and Patrick Brown, the OGs, for saying yes when I randomly asked one day if we wanted to start a Red Wings show podcast. I want to say thank you to Kyle Knopp, for helping me and Pat take the show to the next level. I think longtime viewers and listeners would agree that the three of us had something special together. Thank you to Logan Horn and Evan Sabarin for their contributions as line mates. They each breathed new life into the show at times when the show desperately needed it. Thank you to the numerous guests we've hosted. Peter Plashahansky, Delaney Reimer, Brian Oldani, Rachel Anderson, Christy Flannery, Peter Barricini, Nate Brown, Kevin Allen, Keith Gave, the People's Announcer, Ken Cal, Darren freaking McCarty, Andrew Rinaldi, and anyone else that I've forgotten. This show was better because you were on it. Thank you to our host, producer and editor and overall MVP, Matthew Zator. No one had more of a hand in this show's success than him. And I will tell you, Matt, it was an absolute pleasure turning you into a Red Wings fan. Thank you also to Melissa Boyd, who served as our producer prior to Matt's arrival. And lastly, thank you, most importantly, to you, our fans and listeners. Whether you've been with us from day one or you've recently joined us, it is still kind of mind-boggling that anyone cares about what we think about the Red Wings.
Yeah.
Whether we've received greetings from people outside of North America or receiving messages asking us when the next show is, the support we've received and the community that we've built is one of the most humbling things that I've been a part of. I cannot thank you all enough. And selfishly, I hope to see you all again when I start that new journey. Floor's yours, boys. I gotta recoup over here.
Well, first of all, Devin, thanks for saying dormant and not deactivated, because as a former Coyotes employee, that would trigger me a little bit. So, yeah, I know I always say I'll keep it brief and I don't, but I really am going to. This show started my career. Like literally, this website started my career. It was a privilege to help get it off the ground. I remember when we first started, we were live every week. And I remember how nervous I was at first hosting, and then I just kind of fell into it, and it became second nature, and that helped me so many different ways throughout my hockey journey. And it became a family. At the risk of sounding like Miracle, we're a family. It became a family. I'm not going to reiterate all the thank yous that you already went through, Devin, other than everybody at home who listens, who watches. I read everything you said, good and bad. I always read everything you said, and I took most of it to heart, and it always meant the world to me. Like Devin said, that anybody gave a shit about what I had to say about hockey, and it gave me the confidence to continue and to pursue what I wanted to do, which led to a career with an NHL team. And this show is such a big part of me, and I'm heartbroken for many reasons that it's going dormant. But Devin, I'm so excited for you and for what's to come, and I'm so proud of you and the journalist that you are and the person that you are, and I'm proud to be your friend, and I just cannot wait to continue to watch your career blossom with whatever's next. And anytime you need whatever's next, if that includes podcasting to go off the rails, I know a guy, and that guy is gonna come down going choo choo. So thank you. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I can't say it enough, and it's meant the world to me too. So truly appreciate you having me back and being able to be part of this truly special show and this emotional show.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to thank you guys. And, hockey world is a small world, and being on a hockey team is something special. And this group was really a team. And if anyone that's ever been around the game knows, that means we're a family. And it's just been great getting to know you guys, on air, off air, just in all the text messages that we still send to each other on occasion. It's fantastic that, we're in 4 separate states and provinces right now. And yet you're few of my closest friends that I've had over the past few years, and it's been amazing. And I wanted to just thank everyone that's continued to support this, because we're just four random guys talking hockey that something that we're passionate about, something that we love, but you guys give us the credibility by listening to what we have to say, and then interacting with us, giving us your feedback, telling us what you thought we did wrong, what we have wrong, how we're the dumbest person for thinking or writing that. And you know what? We love you for that, because it just shows you that you are passionate about this team. You are passionate about this sport, and you want to see Detroit do so well. And so thank you for that. And Devin, man, I'm proud to call you my brother. I'm excited about what you have in store, and I just can't thank you enough for even thinking about me to come back and celebrate this moment with you. So it was amazing when I got to ask if I wanted to join the Red Wings from the Tampa Bay Lightning when I was with the hockey writers first joining, and I was like, this is an absolute no-brainer. And then the first time I was on that show, and I think we put a bet down on whoever scored between the two teams had to pay money to the Jamie Daniels fund. And you know what? As soon as you guys all said, hey, I'm on board to do that, I knew we were going to have a fantastic group. So every day I think we've gotten better and our friendship's grown deeper. And I just want to thank you guys for being a part of my life. So thank you.
Well, I mean, as risk of repeating everything, I mean, that you guys have been become my friends over time, and I was disappointed. I was happy you guys were moving on to other things, but I was like, and they're leaving me. I'm still here. But you guys have been awesome. When you guys first asked me to come on as a guest on the Grind Line, I still remember that first episode. I had so much fun, and it made me want to be on the show more. And then I ended up being the host, which is just I'm not even a Red Wings. I started too. I'm not a Red Wings writer. But thanks to the fans and the viewers and listeners for welcoming me into your living rooms too, because I'm a Canucks writer, I'm a Canucks fan, but you guys are good with me talking Red Wings, and I'm happy for that. So like Devin said, this show hopefully is not completely done. Hoping to have some Red Wings writers join up and want to be on the show as well, and then it'll be rebooted, and we'll hopefully come back and talk Red Wings again. But as of right now, we are in hiatus. Hopefully it's not I guess it's indefinite right now, but it's like those shows that all of a sudden they're coming back and you're like, oh, we're back. So hopefully that happens. But again, Devin, it's been amazing hosting the show with you. We were a duo for a long time until we got Evan coming as a trio. And then, and Kyle, and first then it was Kyle and Devin and me once when Pat left. So it was great. I really enjoyed. I enjoy being on the show. I enjoyed being with all you guys, and it's sad, but I'm happy for you, Devin, for what you're going into, and excited to see what you can. And I'm happy you're still staying with the site as a writer. So that's at least the silver lining.
So really quick too, I would like to present one last grindy.
Oh, jeez.
And I'd like to present, man. I would like to present the lifetime achievement grindy, which will be co-received by Mr. Matthew Zator and Mr. Devin Little, who did amazing things long beyond my time with the show. So it's only fitting to send you fellas off in the sunset with a lifetime achievement grindy award. Congratulations on this most prestigious award that was voted upon by one person. And do with it what you will, but you guys are amazing, and thanks for everything you did.
I'll second those nominations so we make it legal at least.
This feels
And then, you know, like the Las Vegas Golden Knights, we are just going on LTIR.
TIR. This
There
feels
we
like
go.
this feels like when we had Kyle win Best Beard 2 years in a row. This feels a little rigged.
It's funny hearing an LTIR joke come from a former Lightning writer, by the way.
Hey,
That's
they
fake.
just invented it. You know, Las Vegas just took it to the next level.
Well, thanks guys for doing it, and thanks for coming on our I guess final show as this format is. So you know, it's been amazing, and again, thanks to everyone who's watched, listened, commented on the show, and because we wouldn't be here, like Pat said many times when he was host, we would not be here if without for you guys. So thanks everyone. Hopefully we'll be back, but as of right now, I hope everyone enjoyed the show, and
Last time.
I don't know how to end this.
One
We'll
last
see you
sign
later.
off, yeah.
Hopefully.
Can you do a Sopranos fade to black?
We'll see you next time, hopefully, on the grind line.